Radical.
Welcome to Flea Market Stories, documenting one man's journey into the world of flea marketing. Well, today at the flea market, the comic book lady, that's what I'll call her, the comic book lady, came by again. This time, thankfully, she did not drop any more comics off for me to sell for both of us. You know, of course, she gets most of the money, then I get a cut. And there's worse problems to have than somebody coming by, dropping comic after comic after comic off for you to sell at your store. Hey, there's worse problems to have. But man, oh man, it's just hard to kind of keep up with them. And I don't really have a whole lot of room to display the comics. And I don't want to weigh down the vehicle, which is why I haven't brought a long comic book box, which most people do when they're selling a whole lot of comics. So I have two egg-type crates that I use to sell the comics and one little brown tray that has the dollar books in there. So last week she brought some, and some she designated, she put in the dollar little box. I don't think she cared much about those. So if she's putting some of those in the dollar box, I then have to write them down to make sure that I don't accidentally sell one and forget that it's hers. If it's a bag comic, then I can put a sticker on it, and then I put like a little dot to the corner designating that it's one of hers. To give you an idea of how many comics she's dropped off, well, just roughly, I probably have 200 books, like 200 freaking books. And that might be a low estimate. It's a lot of books I have. And I think I referenced this before. I said this before. I just kind of feel bad sometimes, and I just said some books sold, and I give her some money randomly. So I was wondering about it, like why she doesn't seem kind of mad that I'm not, selling a lot of them. Well, you see, not just comic books. This is a person that has a gigantic collection of not only comic books, not only manga, not only anime, not only video games, just a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. You might even say that this person could open up a museum with some of the collections that she has. She showed me some of the anime she has. She has some old anime, like some complete sets. She showed me some of the games she has. She has multiple copies of many old Nintendo card games, both the American versions and the Japanese versions, in boxes. She has a wicked massive collection. Like it's insane, right? And I didn't stop to think, wait a second, is there any game stuff that she wants to sell or get rid of? But I kind of don't want to, because I'm kind of doing my own thing with the games, and it's kind of hard to kind of, like with the comics, it's mostly her stuff. So I just kind of, for my records and to keep track of it, I don't want to mix some of her games with my stuff. And most of her games are not PlayStation 2 or Xbox 360 or whatever. It's old Nintendo stuff. Granted, I mean, I could make us a good bit of money from that stuff, but I don't know if she really wants to part with a lot of that stuff. And she might overestimate. And also, fact of the matter is, two reasons I don't want to sell lots of her rare stuff is I don't think I'm going to get hundreds of dollars at the flea market for some of her games that are worth that. And I don't think that I would not have to really worry about theft if I start bringing in some rare games. Like, the most expensive stuff I sell is around $30. Mortal Kombat, some Call of Duty Black Ops. But if I start dropping some of the games I've seen, some of the rare RPGs that she has, I've forgotten some of the names. Some of them she said is rare, so rare. Hell, some of these game collectors on YouTube would just they'd need a bottle of Jergens looking at some of the games she had, because they get so excited. They would. But I don't want to go down that road. I'm having trouble enough selling some comics that she thinks is worth money to the general audience. And she lowballs and low values some of the X-Men and Spawn books that would have greater mass appeal. I tried to explain this to her. And I try to use music as an example. Now, it's not a perfect example, that's separate. But I tried to explain to her how, okay, You got some books like there's, any you know about Black Superman? I think his name is Calvin Ellis. There's one book that's kind of a key book. It's not his first appearance, but it's kind of a key book. It's a variant cover. She wanted me to put 20 on it. Now, for frame of reference, the most expensive Superman books that I generally would sell there, unless they're really old, would be like $10. Like Superman 75, The Death of Superman, I sell that one for $10. Something like that. Exactly $10. It's a hard ask to ask $20 at the flea market, of all places, for a comic book, unless there's a good reason behind it. Like it is a rare book, or not even just like an old book. Because most people are not going to think like, okay, so this book right here, it's Jeff Smith's first work after the Bone cartoon books. Like, so if they have to stop and look up a value of a book and everything, then, but she doesn't think like that. She thinks differently. I told her, okay, here's what sells in comic book. Okay, Wolverine, Batman, Spider-Man, Superman. Okay, to a lesser extent, maybe a Green Lantern, Flash, something like that. I said, that's what sells here. That's what people see. That's what they want. That's what they're familiar with. Those are what's called, the heavy hitters and superhero books. She's the opposite, as many people are. She doesn't find a lot of interest in the superhero books. She likes a lot of the different, like maybe the psychological thriller books, maybe the horror books. And there are some horror books out there, definitely, that probably fetch some money, definitely. But it's not the place. The flea market is not the place for obscure, rare comic book selling. It is the place where you gotta get the awesome stuff, the awesome looking stuff out there. You gotta get the heavy hitters out there, Spider-Man, Batman. That's what you gotta get out there to sell. The Robins, man. Even Batman's sidekick Robin is going to sell better than some of the other books that, she puts high prices on, because she explains to me, well, see, this is a key book because this happened right here. And this is this artist's first work after this. And he's an acclaimed writer, and he got an award for this book. And I'm like, the average person, your average flea market customer who you're trying to sell to, is not going to care about that stuff. They're not. There's many video games that are a lot better than Halo 4 and God of War. There are a lot of great games out there that, are better than the ones that are more common that I ask about. Do you have Call of Duty Black Ops? Do you have God of War? Do you have this one? There's a lot of games out there that fly under the radar that they've maybe never heard of. So, like, I'm going to sell a GTA, but I might not sell a LA Noire. That's just how it is, and you have to understand that. If you want to be successful in selling at a place like the flea market, which is a general audience. Now, you might have some specific people that are different than the general audience, but more often than not, it's just random passerbys that are looking for what's familiar to them. Spider-Man is familiar to people across all mediums. People might buy a Spider-Man movie or a game or a comic, because that's what they know. That's what they're familiar with.